Timothy Zahn has always been one of my favorite, and I'm sure a lot of people's favorite Star Wars authors. He's responsible for a lot of the initial growth of the Star Wars Expanded Universe in the Bantam novels, and established a lot of the characters, planets, and other aspects of the Star Wars Expanded Universe that a lot of us has grown to love over the last several decades. On top of his contributions to the old Legends Expanded Universe, he's also contributed several books to the new canon. Most recent of these was Star Wars, Thrawn, Ascendancy Trilogy, Chaos Rising, which just came out last week, and which we reviewed on our podcast last week as well. Now, Timothy Zahn has always liked having his work kind of cross-reference each other, and whenever he's writing within Star Wars, he's usually engaged less with what other authors and other pieces of media have created for the universe, and more tried to tell stories with his own characters, and this is carried on between Legends as well as canon. It was a bit more limited within the Thrawn Trilogy of the new canon because he was kind of tied in by events that had happened in Rebels. But with Ascendancy and Chaos Rising specifically so far, he had a lot more freedom to kind of bring in whatever he wanted and tie some of his other work together. So there were a few references that I caught in Star Wars, Thrawn, Ascendancy. I'll probably stop saying the whole name now, which I wanted to talk about today because of what they could be bringing back into the Star Wars canon. Now, one of my favorite Star Wars books has always been Outbound Flight. This is a book that is set several years before the Clone Wars, and it explores some of Thrawn's early career before joining the Empire. It lays out a lot of the Chiss government and some background information on the Chiss, like their policy against first strikes. Thrawn has a kind of tense relationship with a lot of other Chiss because he doesn't usually follow this very well, and the book details how he takes out a Trade Federation strike force that had been sent to stop a Jedi mission that was trying to colonize places outside of the known galaxy. Thrawn also deals with some local pirates in the unknown regions that are a threat to the Chiss ascendancy. Now, because this was all part of Outbound Flight, which was a Legends novel, none of this happened in the canon universe or the canon timeline. However, Chaos Rising mentions several events that kind of bring most, if not all, of the major plot elements of the Outbound Flight book into the new canon. For instance, even in the first chapter, there's references made to Thrawn being on Naparar, undergoing his final round of physical therapy for the injuries sustained during the Vigari pirate operations. The Vigari being the species that Thrawn was fighting in Outbound Flight. Not only was his flagship in the book Springhawk still his flagship in Chaos Rising, another ship that had been under his command, the Whirlwind, was mentioned as undergoing repairs from the battle with the Vigari. Even the name of the task force, Picket Force 2, was mentioned as being the same. And Admiral Arlani, who had already been brought into the new canon with previous appearances of Thrawn the Chiss, was also brought back in this story in kind of the same capacity and position, with Chaos Rising exploring more of their background and relationship with each other. A few pages after initially being introduced to some of these connections, another specific connection is made with Thrawn's brother Thras, who was killed in Outbound Flight, and mentioned here as also being a casualty of the same operations with the Vigari before Chaos Rising. So while this doesn't necessarily mean that Outbound Flight in its entirety has been brought into the new canon, a lot of the same events are referenced as kind of having happened in both timelines. And really, for anyone who plans on reading Chaos Rising, I'd recommend reading Outbound Flight first. A lot of those same characters are set up, you get a better idea of what leads to Thrawn's relationship with the Chiss being what it is. Even though some details are different, it really does work as a direct prequel to the Ascendancy Trilogy. These aren't the only events that get sort of brought in from Legends to canon with the book. The other references I want to take a look at go a lot farther back in the timeline to the Old Republic. Now, these are a bit more limited, but they potentially bring a lot more, or open the door to bring a lot more, back into the new canon. Specifically, Thrawn makes references to the ancient war between the Sith and the Galactic Republic and Chiss involvement in them. This is a reference to A Traitor Among the Chiss, an expansion for the Old Republic that was actually contributed to by Timothy Zahn. Thrawn references the war as a time before the Chiss having fully isolated themselves within the chaos, which they call this space in the unknown regions, saying, "The history of the Ascendancy is in these rooms. Some of the pieces dating back to the Chiss participation in the wars between the Galactic Republic and the Sith Empire." Now, I expect what kind of gets brought back, by implication at least, into new canon from this kind of throwaway line is a lot less substantial than what we get from Outbound Flight back in the new canon, but it does kind of set up that there was this ancient conflict between between the Old Republic and the Sith Empire, and a period that we've been kind of hazy on the fate of after the split between Legends and Canon. A lot of the stuff from the Knights of the Old Republic series, as well as the Old Republic, has the potential to be brought back in. We already have some references to previous Sith Lords like Darth Bane and Darth Revan that were brought back in by the visual guide to Rise of Skywalker, as well as some other places. So there is a good amount of the pre-Clone Wars period, or at least the pre-High Republic period, that we might end up seeing more connections to. That's going to do it for today's video though, so if you have enjoyed, consider leaving a like or subscribing for more, or if there's a topic you'd like to see me cover on the channel, please leave that in the comments. Either way, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time.